Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the Edge podcast of CHROs. My name is Varun. I've got my co-host Nisha with me, and tonight our guest is Rohit Venugopal from Razorpay. Before we quickly go into who Rohit is and what this episode is going to be about, I'm not going to recap on the previous episode like I normally do. I'm just going to say that hey, thanks again for being a part of this journey, and thanks again for being so supportive with all your feedback and that you've been giving on the newsletter and on our episodes on YouTube as well. Please be sure to subscribe to them, and we're very close to season one. We've got a very big surprise at the end of season one as well, that Nisha and I will soon reveal on our social media handles too, so be sure you check into that as well. Now let me quickly introduce Rohit, and let's get into this super exciting episode that we've got on payroll especially. So Rohit started his career with a strong background in human resources, and after working at DE Shaw and Flipkart, Rohit dedicated himself to building HR SaaS products like Recruiterbox, which was acquired by Turn River Capital, and Opfin, which was acquired by Razorpay. Rohit, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the audience too.
Hi Varun, hi Nisha. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be, at the beginning of something new, season one. So happy to be on this podcast with you folks. So quickly, I spent about 5 years working in HR, as you mentioned, with the Shaw Flipkart. Have understood what works there from an HR point of view. Then quickly decided to move into HR products. Being a user of HR products personally, I felt that there is a lot of opportunity and potential for HR products and work in them. So yes, I've been working with HR products since then, and have been lucky to be part of a couple of successful products like Recruiterbox, Opfin, and currently at Razorpay. We are part of Opfin itself is a part of Razorpay product suite, and growing the business here and ensuring that a lot of HR folks that I personally deal with, work with, and those who use my products, listen to them, understand how we can make our products better, and basically try to work with HRs as much as possible. So excited to be here, share what I have seen, and also try to understand what are the current things that are happening. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Rohit. It's exciting for us as well because I think payroll is a universally selling topic, right? I'm
Yeah.
surprised that we're looking at it in our 11th episode and not the first episode. So, if you're okay, let's just start. I mean, we have some interesting questions for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So, Rohit, I think the one burning question that all of us have is this: how can we change what would rather be the new paradigm of payroll after during the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
Considering that so much has changed and we're all now citizens of the internet. We no longer have geographies really binding us, and we all realize that work is outside the office, not in the office. Office में तो सिर्फ collaboration होता है.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
And a
so
lot of
how
collaborative work, if you know what
yeah,
I mean.
and
We
chai sutta breaks, which everybody talks about.
No, from cubicles to open office to back to cubicles to now back at home for a
Yeah,
lot of companies. So it's
yeah.
it's a lot of change.
It's a lot of things, and no longer 9 to 5. I mean, the list can go on really.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what is the new paradigm for payroll? Or like there are companies we were just discussing that are kind of changing and shaking things up in the payment space. So, talk about what excites you, and how would
Yeah.
you shake things up a little more?
I think I think there is tremendous opportunity in payroll. I mean, a bunch of things, right? Like payroll itself is, in my view, payroll is it's a very operational activity. Let me just put that out of the way first. Although we are part of Razorpay and I am part of a payroll product, and I sell payroll product. I find payroll extremely boring. I don't understand why companies spend time on payroll. It's a very operational task. It's a non-value added task. Companies should not spend time doing payroll, right? I mean, it's not really radically increasing anything for you as an organization. So one is that, but interestingly, what has now happened is, as you rightly said, with how pandemic is played out, two things. One is the potential talent pool is now vastly different. for any business, right? They're not constricted by geography in terms of who they want to hire, how they want to scale, which market they want to attack, even as simple as that. And the second part is payments itself has come a long way from how things were. So both of these transformations have, I think, during this pandemic time, I think it's going to play out very well. Let me put it that way. It's going to play out very well for employers. It's going to play out very well for employees as well. So top talent is going to have opportunities, as you rightly said, to pick and choose opportunities that will pay them, irrespective of geography. They could be sitting. We're already uh, software engineers in India working for US companies and earning in Indian rupees. So now there is an opportunity to do the same work but get paid in US dollars. So that itself is a radical shift for a lot of employees from just what is the pool that of opportunities that they can attack, and vice versa for employers. And as I said, payments was the stumbling block. Payments, like, you would be hard pressed to find a very simple way of being able to pay an employee in India if you didn't have an Indian entity. I mean, forget about setting up the Indian entity, understanding the compliances required to execute payroll here, and even for an employee to be able to receive that money and then manage his taxation and manage all of that is not very easy. But today there are solutions. There are, as we know, payments is Razorpay itself is in the payment space, uh, but there are a lot of global companies that facilitate this entire gamut of activities, right? Earlier, uh, you actually had, this is completely service driven. So if you wanted to hire someone, let's say, and you wanted a top talent and you wanted to hire from India and you're based out in the US, you would go to what is called an employment agency or overseas agency, uh, and they would kind of facilitate the entire process of immigration and visa, and, all of that. And then the employee actually joins the company after a number of months, and then he is in that geography and is being productive for you. But today, all of that is cut out. Today, it's a simple software, web-based software that you can go click on, and I think starting $50, you can hire and pay anyone anywhere in the world. So there are interesting products in that space who have raised a bunch of money as well and proclaim to be able to hire and pay in 150 plus countries. We have a couple of those companies using our platform because we have built a payroll product that is suited for Indian compliances alone. So we are building for India and the India payroll story. But for a lot of these companies who offer this as a service, they utilize our platform because we kind of handle the compliances. So I feel that there is a lot of things that is going to kind of unfold as a result of this, both for employers and employees. And I think globally we have one of the strongest, uh, I think, fintech industries, possibly at least top three, I would say. And we also have a large talent pool uh, across the different types of roles. So I think it's overall it's a win-win for India as a whole. And I'm very excited about what's going to happen and how both set of folks, employers and employees, will utilize this.
That's super interesting. So let's sort of deep dive a bit on this a little more, right? And one of the things which I think a lot of people would also want to know, like people who haven't explored this overseas hiring yet, right? Even if it's
Mm.
hiring somebody off Philippines or Vietnam. So what are the compliances that an organization should follow when they are hiring globally? Whether it is, again, like I said, right, whether it's from US, India, any place in the world. Could you tell a bit more about that?
So I think one of the advantages of uh, the automation that I mentioned just now across these industries is this. Now, for example, for in our own case, Razorpay as a product and the payroll product that we sell, I don't expect the user to completely understand all the compliances. Actually, that is not required in my view, right? As I said, payroll is not non, you don't have to understand if you're and this is again for a small business. Now when you're a large enterprise company and you're looking to hire in a different location, your options are limited. Either you set up an Indian entity or you go with what is called as an employer on record services. Again, these are agencies, but now again it's facilitated with SaaS platforms. But you could what you will need to do is potentially engage this platform or this agency who will hire employees on your behalf on their roles. So you don't have to set up an entity in India, but still be able to access the talent pool and pay them the market salary that you wish to pay, right? So these are called employment on record agencies and services. And as I said, you can literally go to a website today and get this in 150 countries, as simple as that. So there is nothing stopping you from going to and having that EA from Philippines, or hiring a bunch of people in India to set up a lead gen agency for sales, or any of those. Those are I would say the barriers are very minimal today.
Rohit, I was sort of curious about one thing that you'd mentioned. I think earlier when you were when I think Nisha had asked you the question as well. You mentioned something called top talent, right? Now, the way that I perceive uh, top talent, like one of the frameworks that I normally think of, either you are a generalist or you're a specialist. And one of the things, the way that I go about defining both them in terms of payrolls, and I mean in terms of your payment structure entirely, that if you're a generalist, you may not get paid well, but you will never not be out. I mean, you'll always have a job consistently. But if you're a specialist, you will get paid super well, but you may or may not have a job in lean times. That's how it is. So, what is your definition of top talent? I mean, when you say that top talent, it's sort of like an open field for the top talent right now. What is your implication around it?
So there are multiple things here. For example, it's a very interesting question, and I think what is very deeply involved in this, especially for the specialized roles that you mentioned, is learning. Learning becomes a very important aspect for someone to be called a top talent, right? You don't always be a top. You will not never be always top talent at all times, right? So one is the learning aspect of things. How much are you updated in your skill set itself, right, as an individual, right? Now, from an employer perspective, I would say it's a hit and miss. I think what happens is when you're hiring, you hire for the top talent, and a lot of times what happens is uh, employee comes in, you spend a lot of time, he's productive and he's contributing, um, but you don't have enough processes and structures and rewards and systems in place to kind of keep that employee or retain that employee, because he's still a top talent for some other company, right? So he will get eventually poached, or he will probably leave if he's unhappy with something. Now the cost of replacing that employee is far higher than, if you were able to probably retain the template. And this is something that a lot of organizations miss today. This is probably the most uh, well-known aspect of compensation. And there are large organizations that spend a lot of time with L&D. And there are very relevant L&D programs across organizations that try to tackle this, but it kind of does not happen at the lower level. And there are very few companies who do this, which is why all the top talent goes to these few companies, right? And you talk about certain roles like engineering and so on. There are few companies that people want to go to, and if you're a top talent in that field, you would go to. Now, on the concept of how is compensation linked to top talent and otherwise, interestingly, I can share a personal anecdote. I used to be part of an HR team. I used to be an HR, and honestly, HR doesn't have a seat at business in India, at least yet. It happens to an extent, but it's not there yet. In the West, it is caught up. There are legitimate HR folks who actually drive business outcomes. In India, HR is looked at as a cost function, mostly. So I actually transitioned out of an HR role because I wanted to actually contribute to business or build personally, right, and be part of that. So I did move to a different role for some of those reasons that you mentioned. But again, I would say that it also depends on, there are two, three things. One is, as an employee, you need to stay relevant, and that is on you. That is completely on you. And as an employer, you need to value and also improve what you have. Look within rather than look out. Most times, I would say. And those are two things I would. And I think good talent will always move. That is also something. There are very few people um, who there are people who stick with organizations, but there are other reasons to stick with organization, right? It's not only compensation that people stick for. I would say people who move for compensation will always move, in my view.
That's a super honest answer, Nisha. Before, I mean, I just want to sort of, I have one comment on this, and then, you can sort of go ahead with your question. The thing is that was a super honest answer, Ruth. I mean, like, seriously, that was a super honest and very
Sure.
cowboy's answer in the sense that because I've also been in the similar situation in my own career, wherein I had to pivot because, I was a generalist again, and I had sort of operator experience in the past, and the way that I could survive or the way that I could sort of go up the ladder is only by pivoting, and that also makes sense. And also, one shameless plug here is that HR people, we know that you're viewed as a cost function in India, which is why we started the H podcast for CHROs. Please hit like, share, subscribe. We are
Yes.
always there for you. We are always on your side and trying to change that
Yes.
concept in India. In fact,
Absolutely.
we did an entire episode to sort of help to figure out how HRs can essentially transfer into the business function. Like it was, I think, the episode with Vikas Duana, Nisha, wherein we discussed, hey, how can an HR become the next CEO or the, all of those side of things. So HRs, please support us, please like us on LinkedIn. Nisha, the floor is all yours now.
No, no, just to add to that, one of the things that I enjoy about my job, honestly, when I talk about my payroll product and demo it and get customers on board and talk, I mean, it's the joy of being able to automate a whole bunch of things for them. And I've been in HR. And again, just to highlight one simple point, like there are HRs and I know the pains of an HR in India, right? I've been that. So something as simple as an employee will call you and say, hey, I did not get my salary. And the HR in a typical Indian organization today does not have a response to that. Just think about that for a second. Like you might be the biggest organization, and if your employee calls your HR, the HR is unable to quickly answer to the employee about the status of that transaction, right? And what payments can do, right? We were talking about payments just a little bit ago, and the infrastructure that it can bring is today, if someone is using Razorpay payroll software, the HR actually will not get that call, right? Because the employee gets an automated instruction if anything fails or if anything is incorrect, or it's basically completely automated. The HR doesn't have to pass this data to the finance person to prepare a file to, kind of transfer the salaries. I mean, that is a process that takes 2 days in organizations today, right? And that is where HR actually spends time. So one of the things that I love doing is when I talk to these people and I'm able to show them that, hey, these are some of the things that you will never have to worry about, and you can just see the joy in their face because they're like, hey, because these are questions you get on the floor every day. There are, if you go to large organizations, they would have really big HR operations team who would be on call for this, literally. So yeah, I think there is a huge amount of work that can be done in the Indian geography. As I said, it's changed radically in the West. HR has a seat in the business. They drive business outcomes in the West, and it's also largely possible because of software. Also, to be honest with you, uh, the market in the US and also in India is now there to support HR leaders to kind of get these things done, I feel.
Interesting, Rohit. I think for the longest time, HR was also viewed as a payroll function, right? In
Yes.
most organizations, because it was all about, I reach out to the HR for salary, or I reach out to the HR for hiring, or I reach out for some, some issues I have. It was never about strategy, right? It was never
Yeah.
about, how can I change the paradigm of hiring, or how can I change the paradigm of payroll as an HR head, in the organization. I think that was never there. It was mostly, how can I help with, all the issues that employees may have, and
Yeah.
I needed a face to kind of help employees within the organization. Finance can't do that, so you had like this HR function. But I think one of the things that Varun and I, being industry outsiders, but being very interested in the industry, will always champion is how can we kind of equip the HR to to become a business and a strategy role. And I think one of the most important reasons why we're even doing this or even having today's conversation. So coming to the point that actually you already did touch upon, is that payroll seems like such an afterthought in an organization, right? It's like an appendage ki, add kar liya because you need it, and like you said, people will call and all that, and you need that function. But one of the things we are also seeing off late is people talking about equitable pay, people talking about newer ways of payment, newer ways of bringing some standardization and metrics to this entire discussion, right? Especially globally, like you have been mentioning, and I think we're all aware that globally there's a lot that is changing um, in payments,
Yeah.
especially, right? Because they want to hire the best talent. Although I will reserve my comments on top talent, I completely would have somewhat different views. So I think maybe that's another episode we should kind of record, Varun. But coming back to this, what and how do you think certain barriers that we especially in India are facing that we should overcome, and not make payroll an afterthought, but actually make it a competitive advantage, like we were talking about, and people should join you because they love what you do with how you pay people.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
that's really the reason why people join any company. Why are we running away or shying away from that? I think money is an
Right.
important conversation, and
No, I think other than the fact that people join the company, I think it's why people choose to stay in a company
yeah.
yeah, both,
also.
right? And we for some reason in India we're so shy about talking about money and payment and all that. It's like even that is an afterthought only, like the
Now,
payroll function.
I think that there are now certain companies where you can choose to say, I will receive 10% of my salary in digital currency, right? That's a legitimate CTC structure that is available for you to choose today with companies, right? Just think about that for a moment, like how CTC. One of the I said an employee calls and says I didn't get my salary, but there's another question which haunts HR folks even today, and that is, hey, I thought I would be getting this much, but I only got this much, right? It's a very very common question that HRs get, and
Can't
always
stop
after
laughing. It's very true. That is
it's
so
always after the fact. It's always after
always after
payroll.
the first month.
Yeah. So and it's always after payroll. Like why is first my point is why is that question coming through after you get your salary? Why is the employee asking that? Why can't the employee ask that before? What are you doing to address that? Right. So I think one of the challenges is in Indian companies we don't even articulate compensation well, to be honest with you. And this is a very simple example of that. When an employee calls and says, I thought I'll get X and I got Y. And that's because we don't do a good job of articulating what our compensation is, how much we are going to pay you, how exactly is, having a provident fund beneficial for you, right? That does not happen. How many people actually understand the uh, utility of being able to save investments or declare and save on tax and things like that? Not many people do. It happens. There are efforts that are taken by the HR team to kind of address these, uh, and it happens regularly at large companies. Today, there are a lot of companies that dedicate time to doing this, to kind of benchmark compensation. You can actually go to certain agencies and try to understand how your compensation structure is vis-a-vis competition, right? Razorpay itself, I am aware that they do that, right? To kind of continuously benchmark if we are
Can you
actually
talk
paying.
about where can you benchmark a little bit, Rohit? Just get into that a little, because benchmarking is another huge issue. Like you're giving us so much of, you're actually telling us all the things that we need to keep covering, because benchmarking is a huge issue, Rohit, in India.
Absolutely.
Again, it's not something. So if you know of good places that people should look up and benchmark, please mention that.
Absolutely. I think I can't recollect. There are sites. I mean, obviously, one of the older ones is Glassdoor and stuff. But at certain sizes of organization, you can actually approach agencies in the payroll and compensation space who will benchmark your compensation across surveys with your peer companies and a group of companies that you want to benchmark against. And it could be global standards as well, right? So, but again, this only happens at a certain level of maturity of the organization, right? Uh, for example, one of the trends that I've also noticed happening in the last, say, 5 odd years or 6 odd years is the concept of stock grants and ESOPs and compensation, and how that is so largely misunderstood by employees and employers, and how it is presented and communicated, right? Whether while it is a legitimate, equity is very high risk, high reward option, and it is definitely compensation, but it needs to be articulated again. So that is again another point. Interestingly, one thing that I feel has changed the dynamics a little bit more, and again, there are different parts of industries, right? Like if you look at what's happening in the gig economy, right? Now there's a large industry which is completely compensated on purely outcomes, right? You do 10 deliveries, you get paid for 10 deliveries. That's it. it I mean, end of story. That's your compensation model structure, right? Or if you're an Uber driver, or if you're an Ola driver, like, so it's kind of very rigid, I would say, in one part of the industry, and I actually am not a big fan of that personally, right? I feel that gig economy does not really help employees, for they don't understand. There is no absolutely no reason for the employer to upskill an employee uh, to keep him happy. Nothing, right? So I'm not a big fan, but that is a huge trend, right? There's a lot of things that happen that is happening there. While at the mature organization side of things, what's happening is there were always compensation bands, and you would always hire basis your bands and experience, and a lot of this has always been there in mature companies in India, and that has continued. But what has changed is the models of capturing performance. Right, earlier, for example, one of the oldest and most common methods is probably still applicable large to many organizations is the bell curve model, right? Like you you put your performance on a bell curve, the first 15-20% are put on a pip, and the highest 5%, 10% get rewarded, and everyone else falls somewhere in the middle. Right now, those models are now changing. They have absolutely been outthought. There are, as I said, one entire industry has changed. And on the other side, especially in startups and mature organizations, the concept of OKRs and things like that have caught on very well. And I also feel that they're very good uh, models and frameworks to kind of align people in the company. That was something that was missed earlier in earlier performance models. What would happen is you have a job, you have a role, this is your salary, right? And you do this much, you grow this much, right? It is not really connected to how the company is going to do for an employee. Now with the OKR framework, it's actually distilled down from a company objective. So that is something that I think has got on very well, and it's also personally I find that quite useful. That is what is used at Razorpay as well. And there have been other models that have come and gone. There was this other model based called Holacracy, if I remember, based on creating circles and pods, like doing away with departments as a whole, right? And it is possible in certain organizations, right? Like especially around some of the generalist roles that you mentioned, Varun, right? So you can do that. You can be a good sales guy, a support guy, an operations guy, and also get that partnership for your company, right? You can do all 4 and 5, given the industry. So there are those things that came and went for certain kind of industries, but largely what I see is I can talk of challenges, right? While all of this is changing, uh, there is no clear one is there is no articulation of any of this to the employees, and the other problem is there is no good software that is kind of solving for all of this in the market as well. To be honest with you, and I try to. There are a lot of good performance softwares, but translating a performance framework into a compensation outcome, right? Uh, that is not very clear. That is where I think the companies that do well, and again, we can only look to the West a little bit here, is uh, companies like I think Buffer and so on, they actually publish their salaries, right? You can go to their website and look up how much every individual in the company is earning, right? Now, I mean, that is clear articulation of everything. When you apply for a job in that company, you can actually put in the number of years of experience, choose how much risk you want, how much variable compensation you want, and it will tell you how much your salary is going to be, right? So I think open salaries is very, very interesting as a concept. And one of the things that we spoke about is the normalization of compensation across geography. If you are in a certain pool of employment category, and both of those will happen. And in India, particularly, as I said, there are good signs in some industries, and some I particularly don't like. But largely, I feel that there's a lot of good work that is happening in moving the needle compared to what it was earlier.
Some super interesting insights there, Rohit. So one of the things which got me curious when you told that HR is essentially are viewed as a cost function, right? And while payroll and all of these things, I get that. I mean, one of the things that I really liked. I mean, I'm a marketing person, so one of the things that really appealed to me was the fact that when you're selling your own product to HRs, you're starting the conversation as with the fact that, hey, I know there are a couple of things that uh, you have difficulty in giving answers to. These are the 5 things you don't have to worry about, and that's where a narrative starts. It's a very empathetic narrative. And on the same thread, right, so I want to understand how many organizations today in India or across the globe as well have adopted a payroll tool. That's one thing. Second thing, on a more deeper level, right, you look, no matter how, I mean, the way that I've seen, I don't want to be super cynical about this, but at least in India, right, and I've been a business person myself in the past, everything comes down to cost. No matter how good your narrative and no matter how good your thing is, it's either apples to oranges approach, or like a proper kirana store style ki boss, how much can you really give me for so many employees that I'll so many users of your product and all of those things, right? So how hard is it to sell it to the CHROs, right? For example, how what are the things that they're missing out on, the other value aspects of it today?
I'll tell you a secret. Okay, one of the again, I know this is a podcast for CHROs, but one of the categories of products that suffer the most when it comes to product adoption is HR products, right? I mean, just think about it.
I work in a seed fund, Rohit, I know that.
Right, it is one of the most difficult challenges for an HR team to be able to get their employees to even use a product.
Hey Rohit, sorry to interject, but you've actually built 2 products of your own, right? And can you tell us more about that experience as well while you're answering this too? I think that'd be pretty great because you actually have operator experience in the HR product space, and that is that is explosive, I'd say.
So as I said, I've personally implemented tools and I've suffered from adoption, right, of employees. I mean, think about it. Like, as I said, HR is a cost function. So, and I think just going back to one more question that you asked, how many companies actually use payroll or a solution, and how do you kind of justify the cost, right? So they're all linked. If you think about it, right? Like the reason why companies actually don't spend on the payroll solution is because they don't understand the value. Firstly, the value it brings. For an HR, it's very simple. If I was an HR, as you said, my pitch is very simple. I tell them, hey, you're spending 3 days doing payroll, and after that, no one is happy, right? You've not had a good experience. Your finance person has not had a good experience. Your employees might not have a good experience. They all have leftover questions, right? And this is something that you do every month, right? So it's a repetitive activity, right? You have to do it every month. It comes around. You can't ignore it. It's very, very important. And you spend 3 days, and it's not good enough. The outcome is not good enough. So the pitch is that what if you could do all of this in less than half a day and provide a seamless experience for everyone? There are challenges in the market today, honestly. Payroll in India is very complicated, to be honest. There is a whole bunch of compliances. So actually, no one in the market does automated compliances, which Razorpay does. In fact, there are very few softwares in the market that even can transfer salaries automatically. So because we are Razorpay, we are in the money movement space. So in our payroll platform, you actually can transfer salaries directly via the platform. So that itself is a sea change to how the market functions today. In the market, it's almost always you use an Excel sheet or a payroll software. Then you take the outputs out, give it to your finance team, who then goes to the bank portal, uploads a file, and then there will be an account number missing in that, and then the bank will reject that file, right? And then then it go through the circle, and then again you upload, and then an employee will say, hey, I didn't get my salary. So I mean, ignore all of that, right? Like just the value addition of improving the experience for everyone involved, and the amount of time it frees up for the HR itself, if you ask me. Now they can actually focus on doing, as you mentioned, the strategic aspects of the job, which are a plenty. Now, if you're an organization and if you want to grow and survive today, and if you want to keep your employees happy, just paying them is not enough. I mean, it's as simple as that. First of all, if you're not paying enough, they're not going to be with you. Now, on top of that, you also need to keep them happy. So that is where you actually need to use the HR to have programs in play which will actually help improve the experience across the board. Now, the problem is that our Indian a lot of HR teams don't get to do this because they're strapped with operational work. And as you said, my role has been the first product that I worked on was in the recruitment space, because again, recruitment is where the bulk of the money in HR is. Let me put it that way. It's as simple as that. The second biggest problem in probably HR is payroll, followed by performance to an extent, but performance again only comes in at large organizations. But it's firstly recruitment, followed by payroll and digitization of stuff. And my experience has been that, right? I kind of try to tell them that, hey, one is saving time. More than saving time, I feel that the experience has to be improved. And it's not difficult. It's not rocket science. When you can pay your Kirana store with scanning a UPI app, why is your employee salaries so difficult? I mean, should it be? It just can't fathom that it can be difficult. And then there are compliances. So again, your finance team is sitting with a bunch of task lists to pay TDS and PF and PT, and your HR team is running around trying to figure out PF registration processes. There's a whole bunch of compliance. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for HR folks to use automation tools. We don't do it enough in our country. And the problem is that once we adopt it, there is challenges in employees using it. And that's again, it's a little bit of a hit and miss because I'm saying it, but in my experience, what I've seen is sometimes companies end up trying to do a lot at once. They will bring in one solution and then try to implement everything. And then it takes about 6 months, 7 months to implement everything, and then to go live, and then for your employees to use it, and then for it to deliver results, and then you actually, by that time you have to renew it, right? So, and you've just barely even scratched it and just started getting outputs from it. So one thing I would encourage any business that is looking to set up tools or automate things is, today you have a tool for every problem. And I'm not being facetious here, it's actually there, right? You can find tools catered to if you're building a logistics, if you're in the logistics industry, there are tools that are geared to help you train your field staff with micro learning courses. You don't have to bring in an HRMS which has end-to-end. Bring in an LMS product or a learning management solution that is built to deliver micro learning courses for feet on street people. I mean, and that is what that thing does, right? Because that is core to and this is where an HR can directly impact business outcome, right? Like if you're able to bring in a product or a change that can deliver a result, and something like this, which is introducing an amazing learning program via like a central, think of this, upskilling of how many companies actually even give subscriptions to courses, right? I don't know if like very, very large companies actually do this. This is how it used to happen when talent was in a different place, right? When people needed engineers, right? Like, so if you were a part of Infosys or a Wipro, as part of your performance, you would have to complete a bunch of certifications,
Yeah, they had internal exams and everything. I remember.
internal exams and everything,
Right. Yeah.
right? Uh, how many organizations do that today? I'm not really sure that it happens as often. It it happens. It used to happen before, because today it's a little. There is a lot more things that's happening. HR folks are uh, always fighting for talent most of the times and operationally bogged down. So your learning initiatives, although you take learning initiatives, there are very good learning initiatives. I mean, I can just give one of the anecdotes I keep going back to is there's this company called Zappos. I'm sure you might have heard of Zappos. They have an
Tony Sai.
amazing,
Yeah.
yeah, they have this amazing training program that they have for customer success, customer support. So they will hire you and they will train you for 3 months, and then they will ask you, they'll give you, actually you're given a choice. You can either continue or you can take another 3 months salary and leave, like after completing the training, right? I mean, and that is, to be able to do that as an organization, to have such strong uh, you know I mean, just the belief in your training processes and your culture and what you can add to an employee. I think, I mean, that's like a like a north star for me a lot of times, because I've thought about it a lot of times, and it's also surprising because Zappos was probably one of the few companies that Amazon acquired and continued to let it run independently, right? So Zappos continued to run independently because they had an outstanding customer support and experience that they used to deliver. So I think there's a lot of lessons for HR folks to try and identify the one or two things that drive business outcomes rather than a mammoth project. And depending on the size of your organization, you will be able to find, as I said, there are tools for everything today. I mean, and today, if you, again, because of pandemic, there is no option but to do things with tools. Um, I mean, you get design reviews, or even you have to do your brainstorming meetings or whatever it is. Everything is happening today. So I don't see why HR folks cannot utilize these tools and implement them today. They just have to be a little more uh, choosy, I would
Or
say.
mindful, I'd say. I think mindful would be the right word because, I mean, I'm of the opinion that if you throw tools at problems or at people or at the organization as a whole, it doesn't solve as much of things. I mean, you need to learn how to make best of those tools. For example, in that anecdote of Zappos that you were just saying, I was reading a book on Zappos essentially during the start of this year, and I was very much taken by their happiness framework that they had. And as a consequence of the learning and training that they had done internally, I'll give you an example which I read in the book. So apparently, it was a similar call like this, and I mean not a podcast, but then there's this customer support executive who was talking to a very angry customer who really wanted to cancel, a lot of things and was very pissed off. And the customer support executive, she'd seen that this person had a very messy room and hadn't he was just in a bad mess. So that, and she knew that hey, this frustration is a culmination of a lot of things that are coming up around. So at the back end, she immediately ordered him a pizza reached him in I think 15-20 minutes of the call itself. And then
Yeah.
she went like, hey, we've delivered a pizza to you. Now let's talk about it, eat, and I'm here to talk about. And she spent about 40-45 minutes just addressing this problem, and she made sure that the customer never churned, going
I
the extra
mean,
mile. Yeah.
this is there are there is a ton of stories of legendary Zappos customer stories like these,
I swear. Yeah.
where they've gone the extra mile. And just to give you a little more background, one of the things that I used to do when I was in college was to work in call centers. Right, I've actually worked in a call center in 2006, and it's so funny that in 2006 my job was to sit here in India in MG Road and pick up phone calls from Americans and book cars for them, reservation of cars. That was 2006, um, and I cannot imagine that it's hardly 15 years later, and today I can sit here in a remote part of Bangalore and get a cab to my home at a click of two buttons. Uh, and yeah, and I started in customer support. I started in working in call centers. I learned about customer support, and it, it was it was a very eye opening. It was very strongly feel that for any business to be successful, for any product, let me say, any product to be successful, the only thing you need to focus on is the customers, right? Like go the extra mile with every customer. Why not? Right? Why not? And that's something that we try to do here at Razorpay. Often, not always successfully, but we try to do that here.
I think that brings us into the concept of what a lot of people have spoken about is employee as a customer, right? That's the whole thing, and shifting focus instead of to the customer. At least HR can shift focus to the employees,
Yeah.
which is where it becomes a little seamless. But I have a slightly sticky question to ask you, Rohit, in closing, right? We spoke a lot about tech and automation and tools for HR and all. Do you think somewhere there's a hesitancy in adopting that because people are worried about will they be replaced? And what will it do to an HR person if a lot of tools come into play?
I think it's a moot question in my view. I kind of addressed this some time back, right? As an individual, you have to upskill yourself. You don't have a choice as an individual in today's job market. Because industries, I just told you, 15 years ago, I used to sit in Bangalore and book cars, right? Now, if I have to stay relevant, uh, I I would say to the same HR that you need to be the best possible person who can implement that tool, right? Like, or get the
But give us
maximum
a
out of
little
it.
more, right? Give us a little more. Like we like putting playbooks out there, we like putting frameworks out there. So if you're saying if an HR has to kind of upskill, what should they upskill into, right? I know you just started talking about that, but if we can spend some time of this episode with you yourself,
I
being an
can,
example.
I think I can, I don't know if it's a framework, but I can just talk about what I used to do as an HR person, right? So I'm actually a lazy guy. Okay. So I would try to find a tool if it, to make my job easy. And if there is a product and if there is a free trial, I would sign up. And I would explore the product and I would take a demo of the product. If I had a video, I would watch it, right? Um, and that's basically how I started getting involved with HR products. It's not that I actually started my career in D. Shaw Research, which is a arm of D. Shaw, which is an investment firm and all of that. But you wouldn't believe that my job required me to look for computational chemists and biologicals, like whatever, chemistry scientists and so on, for a scientific supercomputing lab in the US. And I would literally sit and look at people who competed in the math olympiad in the 95s and 96 and try to understand what research they did and see if they're relevant for a role that I am searching for today, right, in 2009. And you have to follow that one individual's work profile, that person, to see if it's a fit for your lab, which is a very, very niche lab, like one of its kind lab. In 2 years there, we probably made about 3 or 4 offers as the entire team, and that was fine. That was like overachieved, right? So I moved from that to Flipkart, which at that time was about 45, 50 employees. And in the tech team, they needed to hire 200 people 3 months ago, right? So, so just being put in that situation from where I was, uh, that itself kind of in it forced me, to be honest, uh, to look out for better ways to doing things. And I also feel that unless you're in that, if you don't put yourself in that uncomfortable place, you will not move ahead. Uh, right. So one of the things that happened to me was that. So I was at Flipkart, and we had a, we had to grow rapidly, uh, and then at certain point I decided that HR is very, very operational. At least a lot of the things that I was getting to do at that time, at a very young HR role that I was in. And I was naturally curious because I would sign up for every little product and try to explore it. And that's basically how I made my shift from HR to, say, a business role. Now, a lot of, pretty much all my peers are in HR even today. Some of them are handling large people functions at companies like Gojek. I have a peer who is in New York handling people analytics for Google. right? He moved from Hyderabad to Singapore and then from Singapore to NY. So I have a couple of folks from my same my same peers who've done extraordinary things in the HR domain itself. So, and the only thing that I would like to kind of share is that you have to constantly look for an opportunity to do something you're doing slightly better, even if it's by a degree, right? And I don't know if there is a framework for that. And in HR processes, I feel that there is a lot of gaps in India. There is enough that you can do for in the HR processes in India that you can move several degrees, at least in the India context. So I think for any HR who is looking to upskill themselves, I would say stay ahead of every tool in the market, if possible. You might not want to use everything, you might not even use everything, but trust me, there are things that you will pick up and learn from every one of those products that you will be able to introduce within your own company, in your own people practices. And you literally don't have to, you literally have to go and sign up and people will give you a demo, right? I mean, think of it like that's what I would do. In hindsight, today I'm selling a product, so if someone does that, I would feel very bad for my sales team. But back then, again there are a lot of webinar videos and videos that you can attend. And when I used to do this, it was mostly we didn't have that many HR products in India, so I would have to explore a lot of products like based out of US as well. So today you have tons of products in India. You can, if you attend any of the HR tech events that happen in India, you will be exposed to a whole bunch of products. And I'm not saying, again, there is a caveat, right? Not every product works uh, for you, right? That's the point, for you and for your organization. So be very choosy, but stay ahead of everything that is happening from a product perspective, because it's not about something that is going to take your job, but it's basically going to augment your role. And that is how I would put it. It's only going to augment your role for you to do better. It's people, like, an employee has a question on anything related, there is nothing is going to, I mean, one of the things that large companies try, and there are a lot of companies that do this, is bots, right? HR bots for employee personal queries. Now, my question is slightly different. Like, the HR teams would build out entire set of bots for a policy or whatever it could be, or let's say payslip or compensation. And they would have all of this, but they would actually not address the core problem. They would have a mechanism to address queries, but they wouldn't actually address the problem which generates these queries. Payslip is one example, right? Where an employee calls and says, "Hey, I didn't understand. I don't understand why I got this much. Why I got this." If you go to a large organization, this is a help desk query, right? Someone will attend to this and respond to this,
I
right?
think, sorry, Rohit, I just want to say one thing though over here with this whole bots and not addressing the whole query. It's because I think somewhere HR was also seen as an opaque function, not a transparent function.
Yeah, yeah. From an employee perspective, HR works for the employer, right?
In
So
India, at least that's the perception, right? HR is the mouthpiece of the management.
No, even in some companies, for example, right, even though let's say that in an ideal startup and this is sort of openness that's there, employees inherently it's not like a feudalistic unionized thing wherein I mean, even though I know I can approach the HR with a certain XYZ things, I don't definitely know for sure if this is going to be used against me or not.
yeah,
And this secret fear is there. It's like the secret atmosphere that's built everywhere. Nobody can just go to the HR and say, hey, I want to do XYZ things. Can I do it along with this? Or probably, you can't even go against your manager in some cases, even though that he may be in the wrong in some cases. There could be a lapse of judgment, or there could be pure, poor documentation because of certain assumptions were made and somebody went to PIP and all of those parts, right? A lot of gray area matter. So
no, I completely agree. Again, the problem is in communication and articulation. To be honest, in India, I have felt again that we as HR folks, we could do a lot more, and it's okay to over communicate, right? It's fine to over communicate when it comes to things like compensation. But I think Nisha hinted this at the beginning. We don't talk about it enough, right? How many times does HR actually talk about it? I mean, even the we also spoke about open salaries and transparent salaries and things like that. So I think the problem there is communication. So there isn't enough communication. Firstly, uh, if it is possible to make it transparent to a certain extent, which is possible within the organization, it should be, because then that is basically a transparent culture. And one of the things that uh, one of values at Razorpay is transparency, and we do have a fairly good compensation bands and structure, and the way things are laid out. At least it's communicated well enough. There are a lot of even for ESOPs, which I mentioned some time back, a lot of companies just offer it. But there are actually tools today that will help you administer ESOPs for India, right? And you can utilize these tools. It doesn't have to be a gray area for the employees. It's not just a piece of paper. You can actually have that implement an ESOP equity tool, which will tell the employee how the vesting options will conclude, how all of that works. And I think that's it's very, very simple way, right? Like, and it clears all the confusion for an employee. So I think communication is the key. I want HRs to over communicate if possible. And that is something that I would say. And when it comes to upskilling, I would say stay on top of tools, because what HR products also try to have to continuously do is find new ways to solve a problem, right? So you don't have, as an HR, you don't always have to do all this thinking and come up with clever ideas, right? If you're just keeping an eye on all the different products and how they're tackling different problem statements, you can actually just implement them in your company. And that itself is your like idea box if you explore one product a week.
Got it. Got it. Amazing conversation, Rohit. I think that, for some reason, I can't stop asking you follow-up questions, but just for time reasons, I think,
Yes.
I will stop. But
I think
but
this has
thank you.
definitely
Very,
been
very honest you have been, Rohit.
for sure.
That's the, for me, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this conversation. Just your
I'm
honesty.
I
I'm
think
I'm happy to be here and share. Nisha, thank you.
I think definitely for HR, the advantage is that Rohit brings a lot of operator experience, which means that he's explored everything from first principle basis, like from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and that way. Right. And I think those anything that he's mentioned here, I think one of the things I really need to appreciate you, Rohit, was that your own inquisitiveness that you're bringing. And I think if enough people had it, Edge would be a very different space right now. But thankfully, it isn't, because of which Edge exists. I'm a little selfish here, but
Or
No,
Edge.
at some point, we'll run into the risk of being overcritical. So stop
see.
saying that. No, HR, there are things that are right as well. Okay, we're just
no, absolutely. As I said, there is only potential, and it's only turning for the better
yeah,
in
which
every aspect.
yeah, which is the edge. So
Yeah, which
yeah,
is it? Yeah.
that is the edge, Varun.
Right. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been a slightly longer episode. Please be sure to check out the timestamps in the YouTube video, which is something that we've sort of created intentionally to help you consume this video in bite-sized formats. Because we're also cognizant of the fact that not every part could be relevant to everybody, since we cater to a lot of to a much broader audience. If there's any feedback, or if you want to get in touch with Rohit, all the subscribe to our newsletter. Everything is going to be there, all the details and everything. And yeah, thank you again for sticking with us for another episode of the Edge podcast for CHROs. This is me and Nisha signing off. Thanks a lot.